but also you have to think, even if you hire a vendor for something like this, do people feel comfortable giving personal information, right? We have people write back and say, oh, anonymous. Right? Yeah. So it's a very sensitive topic. I don't know how people feel. No, I get that. Yeah. So. Whoa. Yeah, it's your mind. No. How you doing, man?
Here's the bet for the day. Will they be able to tell me a strain name that's not recreational in nature?
Try to go down.
Will they be able to?
Actually, they're like, sexual.
Well, I don't know. Because I have zero. I have zero problem. Most people are already.
I can tell you what it's.
Abby, can you hear me? That's an audio.
Trevor, I saw you, that's fine. When I was
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the June 18th, 2024 Medical Cannabis Policy Advisory Board meeting. This will be the last board meeting, or at least for now, where I'll be serving as chair. Today, we're going to elect a new chair and vice chair. So we'll get to that here shortly. First of all, I wanted to make sure I need to read the intro script, and then we'll get on to the approval of the minutes. All right, so this meeting is being held virtually and is hosted by the Utah Department of Health and Human Services, Center for Medical Cannabis based in Salt Lake City, Utah. Public notice of this meeting was provided as required under Utah's open meeting laws and was posted on the Utah Public Notice website. In compliance with Utah's open meetings law, this meeting is being recorded. A recording of this meeting will be posted to the Utah Public Notice website no later than 3 business days following the date of this meeting. A rough draft copy of the unapproved written minutes will be posted to the Public Notice website within 30 days of this meeting. Approved minutes will be posted to the Utah Public Notice website no later than 3 business days after board approval. Every proposed agenda item must have a 1-page summary of the topic submitted to MCPAB at utah.gov no later than 7 days prior to the board meeting. Board members will present the 1-page summary during board meetings, and board members will discuss the summary. If no written summary is provided to board staff, the relevant agenda item will be removed from the agenda. Only items that have been submitted in writing in advance of board meetings will be allowed during discussion by the board chair, including presentations of the public. Board members will then request additional presentation and memorandums on the agenda item from relevant bodies to be presented at the next board meeting. Those presentations and memos also need to be submitted to MCPAB at utah.gov 7 days prior to the board meeting. For public comment, here are some general instructions. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person. If you want more time, you must request it from the chair. The chair may accept or reject requests for additional time. Public comment period is not guaranteed every meeting. The chair has the authority to create or remove public comment period from the agenda or during the meeting. You can look over public comment guidelines that are posted on the Utah Public Notice website. When making a comment, please state your name and your affiliation so it can be reflected in the meeting minutes. Only comments made on items listed on the agenda will be considered. If you have a comment about an item not listed on the agenda, please email them to mcpab@utah.gov. For those making public comment over Zoom, the Zoom public chat will be disabled during Zoom meetings. When the chair indicates it is time for public comments, you will use the raise hand icon on Zoom to indicate you would like to make a comment. When you are called on, you will be taken off mute. Please then take 2 minutes to make your comment. For those making public comment in person, please sign in on the public comment sign-in sheet with your name and indicate what agenda item you want to make a comment on. The chair will indicate when it is time for the public comment period. Board chair will call on you when it is your turn, and you will come to the public comment table, and then please take 2 minutes to make your comment. As a reminder, if you are in person, please do not speak when others are presenting. Our mics are very sensitive, and those attending over Zoom cannot hear when there is more than one person talking at a time. Side conversations and comments from the public during this board meeting are prohibited. Please use a voice that is louder than your typical one when speaking, commenting, or presenting. When you speak, please lean in towards the table as if there is a microphone. For additional information, to make a suggestion for agenda items, or contact board members or staff, send an email to mcpab@utah.gov. Okay, with that, we'll turn back to the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the May 2024 minutes? Does anyone have any proposed changes? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes. All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. We have a second. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the May 2024 minutes. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously. I want to turn over now to administrative business. I talked about this at the outset, but today we're going to be having elections for the chair and vice chair. Before I get to that, I do want to thank everyone on the board for a good first year and all the support that I've received as the first chair of the board. Thank you to Matt for being the vice chair. It's been an honor to be the first chair of the board. I think as we've kind of tried to figure things out in this first year. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that I think this board has done some really good work and made some impactful policy changes to Utah. And I hope that will continue. And I hope we can agree that just because it might not always be your cup of tea, progress is progress, and we should continue to push medical cannabis forward in Utah. And so I'm hopeful this board will continue to do that. regardless as to who the chair or vice chair is. So I am going to give other folks an opportunity. You know, I'm not going to run for chair or vice chair this year. You know, that could change in future years. But I feel that it's important to make sure that everyone on the board gets an opportunity if they would like to. But I've had a wonderful time. I plan to remain a very engaged member of this board, and I'm happy to discuss anything with anyone. So with that, if we'll get to nominations in a second, but if anyone is interested in running for the chair position, please make that known now, and then we'll do the same thing with the vice chair. So who in the room is interested in being nominated or running for the chair position? All right, so it looks like we have Matt, Page, and Des. I will give someone an opportunity if they want to nominate Matt here in a second, but I did myself want to nominate Des. Des and I have had some conversations about this. Des, for sure, at this table, has the most experience with medical cannabis in Utah, going back long before it was legalized. I think Des also is someone who has a very well-rounded view of the program in Utah, has relationships with patients, relationships with providers, understands industry, and I think would provide a very well-rounded view of the program and would serve well as the board's chair. And so with that, that is why I will nominate Des as my successor for board chair. So if anyone would like to nominate anyone else or say anything on behalf of Des or otherwise, please do so. If not, we can just move to a vote.
I would like to nominate Matt Page for chair position. As a QMP on the board, there is kind of taking me under his wing, trying to show you the ropes. And it's like those who don't have a question, one of this will once the company will precise it as soon as let's see what it's based on the player. Appreciate what you've done for me in the education.
Okay, would anyone like to say anything about Des or Matt in addition?
We do need a second. Well,
Oh, for the nominations?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a second for that. So have to go through normal board procedures like that. Do somebody a second for a nomination.
It's Robert's Rule of Order. It's
So it still requires a second. Yeah, just make it. Okay, well, let's take the roll call vote. We can do either Matt or Des first, and then, yeah. And so with the Robert's rules, would we have to? Can you just say vote is for, like, if I'm voting for Matt or I'm voting for Des, or do we need to take a full roll call vote for Des, a full roll call vote for Matt?
I think you can just say their name.
do the former.
Yeah, just say who you're voting for. That's what I figured. Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick too? Sorry, I was.
Make sure we do it so she can properly record it.
Yeah, trying to make a comment. Yes, erase.
Yeah, sorry, you guys. I was just a minute behind trying to get my hand up. I just wanted to say. What's that? Sorry, Des, were you saying something?
Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry, I couldn't get my hand up quickly enough to make a comment. I think we've got two great nominees, Des and Matt. I think both are great. One comment that I've seen work well in other boards is a cadence where we have a vice chair move up to a chair. I've seen that work really well in the past. Just something that I wanted to at least make note of, maybe a little discussion of how I would vote. So thank you.
Yeah, and we had talked about that, the potential for, the vice chair to become the chair. We would need to make a change to the bylaws, so I don't think we're going to do that today because it's not on the agenda. But I think we could probably, that could come up as early as next meeting. But I think with that, with the understanding that if you are the vice chair, you would serve in that vice chair role for a year, and then you would serve in a chair role for a year. So you would be putting yourself in for a 2-year term. And I wouldn't want to run into an instance where someone says, yeah, I'm good with vice chair today, but a year from now, all of a sudden I'm not going to be good with chair. So we would need to make sure that the commitments, are there for that. That's what they do within the Utah State Bar, for bar president, I find it works well. But that would certainly be something we have to agendize on that in the future. So with that, Misty, will you go ahead and take a roll call vote, please?
Ken Anderson,
Who are we voting for right now?
just indicate either Matt or Des as your vote
For chair.
for chair.
Yeah, based on my comments, Matt.
Nanette Beresny, Des. Cammy Clark, Matt. Desiree Hennessy, Des. Jimmy Higgs,
So just really quick, just a quick comment on my vote. I've worked with Des really closely, passing legislation. I think she's great, Matt's was great. And but obviously the same school of office candidate. So my vote's in work and that is based on the fact that he's the question.
JP Lorenzen,
Desiree Hennessy.
Chris Morgan,
Not any.
and Matt Page.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's one.
Misty.
Oh, sorry. Misty. Matt Page. So it's like it's, yeah.
Yep, so the motion carries, or the nomination carries. Matt Page will be the next board chair, starting next month, through the June of 2020. Okay, now we need to turn to the vice chair. Would anyone like to make a nomination or nominate themselves?
I want to nominate, can I nominate you? Can I want to nominate Nanette. I think that it's incredibly important to have a patient representative on the board. I think that's why we cut this down to not having two industry people. Although I don't think that it's going to change the direction of the board of who is chair and vice chair. I think that having a patient or patient representative on the board reminds us all that we're patient focused and keeps us kind of heading in that right direction no matter what. So that is what makes it happen.
I'll second that nomination. Anybody else want to nominate themselves or someone else for vice chair?
I was gonna nominate Des.
I would do that too, so.
I would say.
For all the same reasons mentioned, but also with the experience that you bring to the table, being involved in the program.
I would do that as well.
Also, we had to do for a chair, and just like I said, the way kind of my rule about it, it's much transition from the last year to the chair. So that is your application.
But they could be totally sick of you guys.
No, I don't.
Rich might want to.
We'll see.
One question, and I think Des and I talked about this last week. But half of us are a 2-year term. The other half are 4.
Yeah.
So understanding that, I remember what your years are for children.
Because I think you, me, you are certainly for.
Yeah.
Was it everyone that Commissioner Butters nominated or selected as one of your term?
Yeah.
So you're the other. Butters nominated. However it is, I think that's how it was.
We just have three.
Commissioner Butters confirmed it was a 4-year term and then everybody else.
Just for the initial.
Just the initial and then it's everyone's a 4-year term.
Then most likely, you usually get a second term anyway, which, I mean, most state agencies go with that on the board. So.
Okay, well, with those nominations, Ned, would you rather it be yes, or would you still want to keep your hat in the ring? Yeah.
There's
gonna be a boxing
match,
Okay, sounds good, cool. Well, we have 2 nominations and seconds for both. Is that the?
Yeah, if you want to see the proper.
Right, so yeah, your 4-year terms are the QMP, the patient advocate, the general public, the cultivator, processor representative, and the pharmacy representative. So that leaves our mental health professional, our patient, and then our law enforcement as our 2-year are two-year members. Also the research member as well as a two-year member. I didn't see that.
How does that work with Candy being your replacement? Was she just filling in for at least?
And she started her term and
She
she
serves the full 2 years.
Yeah,
started.
yeah,
She went in February.
she fits into that term.
So if we ever have to have a replacement member of the board, they will just
When
whenever
just
they're,
finish out the term.
they just,
No, a new term starts.
yeah, they have.
Okay, so she has 4 years then.
But, and then also they can, there's not a limit on how many terms someone
Oh,
can serve. So if they were wanting to, they could say, hey, I'm willing to do it again, and then if the agency was willing to appoint them again, they could continue to serve.
You guys will do, you'll just. That makes sense. But you guys will do, like, when people come to the end of the terms, there'll be another application process by which people will apply and consider.
Yeah, right, yeah, but it could be that if that person's still interested, that we could choose them to continue.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, you would do an application process where your new people or whoever was already on the board that apply.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we have the nominations and the seconds. Abby, we can go ahead and take the roll call vote.
Ed Anderson,
See, this is a win-win for me, but I'm gonna go with Des.
Nana Perez, Des,
Hard, Deb.
Desiree Hensky, also Jeanette, Amy Hicks,
Yes.
JD Marissa,
Well, since I seconded the nomination for Ned, I can't not. vote for her.
Chris Morgan, Matthew Page,
That's right.
and Missy Smith.
Three of them. 72.
7-2.
Okay, so Des will serve as the vice chair for the board for the next year, from starting next month, through June of 2025. Okay, we can, unless anybody wants to say anything more about that, we can turn to the next item of business on the agenda, which is an update from DHHS and UDAF. We'll go ahead and go with DHHS first. Rich, go ahead.
sure. So as of the end of last month, as of the end of May, we have a count of 86,500 active medical cannabis cards. And that's just over 4 years of operation for the program. And 944 QMPs registered in the program currently, and then 75 PMPs or pharmacists working at medical cannabis pharmacies. And then also a major item that both DHHS and UDAP have been working on is the transition to Salesforce. And we've been able to involve stakeholders in that. So far, we've had some testing done. And for now, we have our go live scheduled during the first week of August. And then or actually it's that second, August begins in midweek, so it's actually that second week. Anyway, and then at the end of next week, there will be an email that goes out to stakeholders of DHHS informing them of upcoming training that'll be done for those that use the EBS on a daily basis, like qualified medical providers and qualified medical provider proxies, the employees that actually work in the medical clinics. So there'll be an email that goes out at the end of next week that'll provide them information about those opportunities to complete those training sessions and learn more about how to use the new EVS. And so, and then those training sessions those will begin in mid-July, and the intent is 2 weeks prior to go live is when we'll be doing those training sessions. So,
Will those be offered also to EMPs and pharmacists?
yes, yeah, those are other stakeholders that will need to know how to use the EBS as well. Yeah, so that gives just an update. And then while we're on talking about the Salesforce software transition, UDAP, anything to add to that?
UAP finished up this past week for the ICS system. Things went pretty well. We're still working on quite a few portions of the ICS system, but things went fairly well through the UAT. We've also been in talks with several additional point of sale companies. In addition to Dutchy, who is the only one currently online for providing point of sale. But we're hoping to have a few more, probably not by launch time, but shortly thereafter. Anthony Garcia also just sent out an industry-wide update, so please talk to your, whoever gets those updates if you have any questions about the timeline on the ICS side, and we'll be sending out training information through that same channel as well.
No concern about launching the ICS prior to the MJ freeway contract expiring, right?
We're looking at extending.
Okay, also in the agenda, there is a link to the medical cannabis card expiration survey results. Also on the public notice website, you go there and look up Medical Cannabis Policy Advisory Board. There is a copy of what those results were. That provides a high-level summary of the results, and it's been emailed, I believe, to each of the board members. So hopefully you've had a chance to review that. And I'll just remind the group that the Medical Cannabis Policy Advisory Board had requested that DHHS do the survey. And so we of course wanted to accommodate that request, and the purpose of it was just to learn more about how individuals or why individuals decided to not renew their medical cannabis card if they decided not to renew. And so the survey was only sent out to those who had expired cards. And we relied on our electronic system to tell us who those individuals were. And they had to have had their card expired for at least 60 days already. And it would have had to be expired between May 19th and they would have still had to have been expired at the release of the survey. So it was only sent to those who had expired cards. And also one thing I think is important to emphasize is we did not attempt to be scientific about this survey. So there should be some, I think, just be careful in relying on the results of the survey for making major decisions. But in the end, there were 2,900 individuals that completed the survey, which was I think about 20% of all those who it was sent to about 14,000. And of those who completed the survey, 54% reported that it was just too expensive for them to continue participation in the program. And that was either due to having to meet with a medical provider and pay for that appointment, or due to the product being too expensive. And of the 54%, 21% reported that both of those reasons were a factor. So both the product price and the cost of the medical cannabis visit, they reported both of those as being factors in their decision. And then of the 54%, 18% reported only that the medical provider was too expensive. And then 14% reported only that the product was too expensive. So that gives you just a deep dive on the most common reason why people reported they had decided to allow their card to expire. The results of the survey are there for everybody in their packet. And then for those joining online, you're able to go to the public notice website and see those results for yourself. And so now that concludes our update, and the board is welcome to discuss the results of the survey right now, or if you want to do that at a later meeting, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yeah, does anybody have anything like to share about the survey or the results?
I have one question on here. Is this something that Department of Health has looked at doing annually in addition to annual surveys? You know, you do a market report towards the end of October, November.
It's something we haven't looked at.
I know there was what in 2022 a patient survey done of all active patients.
Right.
I just think it's good to like not only keep asking them questions, but also asking those who don't keep their cards, so we can kind of understand what the reasoning is. Might be good information for the board for decisions to make this next year.
Right. Yeah, I'll visit with our staff internally and ask about that possibility.
Well, we as a board or for you make a recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
DHHS, we conduct the survey on an annual basis.
Yeah.
So, we have no power as well. I mean, I think one thing that wasn't noted is if you look at the last page, there is a chart, about, would those folks get their medical cannabis card again? I mean, over 70% of respondents said yes, right? So I don't think it's that people don't want to have a medical cannabis card. There's obviously just some things that are making it prohibitive. And as you see, there's a laundry list of things. I do think one other thing that's interesting to point out is that only 32 unique participants claimed the quality of the product in Utah is the reason that they didn't renew their medical card. And there's some other interesting things on here as well. Obviously, people preferring hemp or lower THC was quite small as well. So that doesn't seem to be the reason that people aren't renewing. So I just think it's interesting to look at that chart. Obviously, the two biggest are the cost of the provider visit as well as the cost of the product in the pharmacies. But you combine that with the analysis and report that UDAP did, Utah faces some unique challenges as a market, being surrounded on three sides by mature adult use markets, and also the flow of illicit products that come through this state is a significant challenge for the legal industry. Because there are more things that we have to do from a legal perspective that the illicit market doesn't have to do. And there are very different markets in Colorado, Arizona, Nevada. And then if you go to the West Coast, even probably more different markets than what Utah faces. So I think I appreciate the survey. To me, the results weren't necessarily surprising. I do think it's interesting to see some of these further down the list, how much they factored in for people, or what they factored, you know what I mean, for it. Obviously, my job won't allow medical cannabis. I'd love to see that changed. We should be protecting all employees who are taking lawful medicine, regardless if it remains illegal federally. So yeah, I think some things on here, honestly, for us to look at as a board, to maybe set some agenda items on in the future and make some recommendations around. So.
And, it might be worthy to indicate that 46% of those who completed the survey reported that the provider or the product being too expensive was not a factor.
Yeah, so I think a mixed bag of results, but I think we know that those are the biggest things we probably discuss as a board, and some of those things we may be able to have an impact on, but some of those things are just the way the market is developing here in Utah, and that's what the cost of the service or the medicine, is. Obviously with things, potentially moving to Schedule 3 at the federal level, and we'll talk about this as we get into some of these proposed rules, or at least I will. I really think we should all be thinking of what is the medical cannabis program in Utah going to look like in a Schedule 3 rule. Because as it's proposed right now in the proposed federal rule, it's going to look very different than it looks today. Everything's going to be subject to the DEA and the FDA. That's how Schedule 3 substances are handled. So that is something we're all going to have to start thinking about. But also you'll have to start thinking about, well, if cannabis gets moved to Schedule 3, does that change the requirements around advertising? Right? Should we be able to advertise differently, right, than we currently are? So we'll have to think through a lot of those things. And so I would encourage everyone to do as much homework on Schedule 3 as you can. Look, 280E going away for us as businesses, wonderful. Opening up research, wonderful. But subjecting cannabis to the same requirements as other Schedule 3 substances, number one, I don't think it works, in my own personal opinion. But number two, it will be vastly different than the world is today. So I would just encourage everyone that as we move forward in the next year, and beyond, to really be considering what medical cannabis and really cannabis in America is going to look like in Schedule 3. Schedule 3.
There will be commercial. And we are, Nanette and I are still working on the cost. That is, which is the payment. So to get all of the different pieces that add up across the board on that approval application. So just bear with us as we have that information and also things that we get from others. So just know that's all still in the works for hopefully soon.
Okay, anybody else want to talk about the expiration survey results, or can we turn it over to some updates from you guys? Okay, Brendan, go ahead.
I'll just turn it right over to Cody to do
You're gonna run into the rules.
rules
All right.
from last month.
Well, I was just say, I'm just gonna give an update, the rules that we talked about last month, in particular, the pharmacy route, after a couple of catches, I think the board made, we made some changes, and I've submitted those to the rules, authority. So we're in the process of that, right, 30 days should be being published. Maybe it got published last week, I haven't got an email, so maybe not, but we're in that process, so in the next, 30 to 60 days, we should see that, pharmacy rule and other ones come up. The next rule on the agenda, as we get through, actually, we're working on some hand things right now, but it would be the closed door pharmacies and things like that,
Do you
so,
have an idea of when we might see a draft of that before the summer's over?
yeah, if everything goes well.
August. I'll give you till last month.
Well, you can give me all you want to, but I ain't promising.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, no.
Yeah, I didn't know you were a witch. Explains so much to me. Yeah, now I know.
Hey, the farmer.
All right, anything more on just the general updates from you, Dad?
No, so.
Okay, well, we will turn to agenda item number 5. We were gonna have some proposed rules from THHS. But they weren't able to get those in time, so we are just gonna review the UDAF rules. And again, I do appreciate DHHS kind of following the same cadence as UDAF with the rules in terms of putting them in front of the board and then publishing them. I think that's what you developed to this point. So with that, I will turn it over to either Dr. Forsythe or Cody James to present on R66-2 and R66-3. We will have public comment on this, and I also imagine there will be some discussion from the board. So with that, I'll turn it over to you. You can, I think what might be easiest is we can summarize maybe both rules, and then we can have discussion.
Yeah, I'll, Cody James, Deputy Director of the Medical Cannabis and Industrial Hemp Division at the Department of Ag. I'm gonna talk about R66-2, the cannabis processing rule. As you can go through the first couple of pages, you can see just kind of cleanups as we've changed those rules from being R68 to R66 rules. There's just a little bit of cleanup on the first page there. Same thing as you get to page 3, under R66-2-5, you can see that we're just updating it again from 68 to 66. Same thing on the next page. So a lot of that really at the beginning, just clean up. Probably the most, the thing to probably go into a little bit more detail is under R66-2-9, inventory control. So this is a way to hopefully clarify some things. Sometimes the unique identification number and the package ID being used as the same thing, type thing. So what we wanted to do is make this rule follow a little bit more similar to the cultivator rule, and actually split these things off to make sure that we actually had those in place. So instead of the package ID, we put the batch or the lot number under E instead of the date created with, because this is the process, we put the date entered into the inventory control system. And then down on 4, you can see that there's actually a change that says each batch, lot, or sample of cannabis derivative product, cannabis waste shall have a physical tag containing information listed above, type of thing. So just some clarification, there's a handful of times we've ran into situations where those things that I just listed were not tagged or just had something written on them about all the information. I think the department always had thought that was the given to have the tag with all of those things on there. That's just a clarification for that. Under R66-2-10, under 2, there was an extra so we removed that. And then 2-13 is just another cleanup from R68-29 to R66-3, which is the new testing rule. And then R66-2-14 is kind of some of the meat and potatoes that we're talking about here. So as you may recall, the board had discussed in some level the use of radiation on cannabis a couple of months ago. I know that some people did some research and things, and we appreciate that, some input type of thing. Just to go through this in summary, and I can go into it in more detail if you would like. But the department felt after the research we had that radiation, it's obviously approved by FDA, it's approved by USDA to use on different aspects in the United States for food items and things such as that. But we did look at it that it is actually a process. And so it should not be underneath the cultivation side of things. We'd much rather have cultivators be able to grow it clean as flowers they possibly could. But to allow radiation to happen at the processor level after testing and being asked to do so through the remediation process. Once they got approval from for remediation, first and foremost, they actually should have that plan inside their operating procedures to make sure that it's in there just as everybody knows in their operating plan to move forward with that. And then once they're approved to do that through their operating plan and their remediation form, then there'd be some identification aspects. We do feel it's extremely important to make sure that the patients know that if there's products that are going to be out there that have been radiated, that there is some labeling that goes along with that, as well as some record keeping that the processors would have to keep in place for a certain amount of time to show. One of the other concerns we had as we was talking about cultivators in this situation. If cultivators we started to worry about the record keeping, how that would get passed on to processors and things like that. So we felt that at the very beginning of this, at least, that radiation should happen at the processing level and for remediation only. Unless you want me to keep going, JD, and talk this later.
Yeah, you can finish it, 'cause we're gonna do both rules and then we'll allow discussion.
Okay, perfect. Under R 66-2-15, which is now the new number, it used to be 14 for labeling and packaging. I did notice this as reviewing that number 2 and 3, we should actually keep the dates on those that say January 1st, at least till we know for sure that there are products that haven't been manufactured before January 1st, 2024. So we'll keep that in for the time being. However, we would like to remove the May 3rd, 2023 date below for raw cannabis or cannabis sold for vaporizing. Obviously open for based on the knowledge of the industry and what's out there for that. Moving down the list on labeling and packaging, you move down to 13. We're adding a cannabis processing facility may include a QR code affixed to the product that is scannable for the purpose of inventory control at the pharmacy. The QR code may not link to any other information. So we had some input coming back that people that sometimes the scanners and whatever you want to call it weren't quite working. So we had a request to do QR codes. So that's what we could come up with. After that, you see that there was a change in numbering just based on adding 13 there until you get down to 18 of that same section. It says no other information, illustration, or depiction with the exception of directions for use or an item required by state law shall do on labeling. We have been getting questions as well, but then sometimes it's just a question to kind of maybe see how far they can push it. But if the state law does say that it should be on the label, it should be on the label type of situation. So one thing that I'm sure is going to be the part of the conversation as well is number 20. I think there was some conversations in different aspects before. What we put here on number 20 was strain names on cannabis production, packaging, or labeling that are recreational or sexual in nature as determined by the department shall be abbreviated or initialized. We understand that there, like as I mentioned, there is going to be a lot of conversation on that. We're obviously open to a couple different things, and this list is not the only things, because I'm sure there's going to be other things, but we've talked about all strains being abbreviated. We've talked about numbers that reference the strain names in the menu. Obviously, there's going to be a push for no change at all, allowing strain names, things like that. So I'm sure that list can go on for a while based on that, and we'll be happy to have that conversation because I think it'll be enlightening for the board as well as both departments in that situation. So again, to our 62-15, which is now 16 for transportation. And as you can see, as you go down the list, it's just number changes again until you get to R 66-2-21, which is targeted marketing. The statute itself actually defines targeted marketing and what can actually happen already. The addition to the statute just says that the department, so the addition to the statute happened in 2024, allows processors to go ahead and do targeted marketing based on the wording. And so these are the rules for targeted marketing. Again, the statute itself in the definition talks about what target marketing is. So we focused on kind of the controls on that versus anything else, again, based on how the statute read. So I'm happy to go into that any further than you'd like, and as you'd like. And then I think really overall, that's the change. The majority of it is changing numbers to reference either law changes or the new rules, with the exception of radiation and target marketing with a couple of minor potatoes on the side, I guess.
All right, and I'll start going over R 66-3, formerly known as R 68-29. Quality assurance testing on cannabis. There are a few changes here. Right off the bat, I'd like to make an apology to the board and thank JD for reminding me that you guys had voted to make a change and we had agreed with it in that meeting, but I neglected to include it in the copy of the rule that went out. With permission, we did make that change and I can share it with you now, or we can hold off according to procedure till next time.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, we as a board voted to make a recommendation so that you'd have to allow bulk testing for vape carts. And I think it just got lost for translation as to who it was resting with. Because the last email I had showed it in our board as the board. But I then talked to Trevor and we determined that there was actually a recommendation. So Brandon's happy to present on it. But that's the effect of what it will be.
Yep. So it essentially just boils down to a single definition change for final product, item 20 in the definition section. We're going to change it to read: final product means a reasonably homogeneous cannabis product created using the same standard operating procedures and same formulation, A, in its final packaged form, or B, for vapes in the sealed vape cartridge. So this is just allowing sealed vape cartridges to go to lab testing without their full packaging because they are a sealed unit when they're sent to the laboratory. Yep, we aim for simple, no problem, and I apologize again for forgetting. We really do.
Every day I can and before I'm no longer the.
It's just really complex, man.
He can sue on this rule.
Digs. Right, that's not in any rule. Digs, you can make digs in
Oh,
any
yeah,
position.
you're welcome to dig.
It's great news.
We enjoyed as much as you guys. The next few things you'll see in here are just renumbering, like references. So there's no real need to go over any of those unless somebody sees an issue. The place where the next substantial rule changes are made are in R 68-3-8, the microbial standards. There's some minor clarifications like in the adding CFU per gram, but then there's also some more significant changes in specifically naming the Aspergillus species that will be tested in certain products.
You guys already been testing for that, you're just clarifying.
Yes,
The language.
for Aspergillus,
It's not
yeah.
changing anything you're testing for, you're just clarifying what it is in rule.
Yeah, specifically with Aspergillus.
Gotcha.
But for the other ones, we have made some changes to the pathogens being tested for in different products to more closely align with recommendations made by bodies to the whole nation, really. So we feel that these are in accordance with the testing that should be done by product type.
No concerns that anything new you're identifying is currently in product series?
No, it's more just to align with general standards. Again, we'll have a few changes to numbering related. One change that's, again, this isn't a significant change in the fact that we've still been testing for cyfluthrine through this whole process, but somewhere in the past, cyfluthrine got left off of the list. Not sure whether that was in the rule board or something we sent to the rules committee, but we found it and we're adding it back now. And I believe that's it for our 66-3.
Okay, we'll bring it back to appreciate the presentation from the gentleman. We'll bring it back to the board for discussion before we turn it over for public comment. We on the board want to discuss either one of the rules. Of course, you're allowed to ask questions to the regulators here who are proposing the rule, or making sort of general comments.
I'll start. Cody, you had mentioned that the radiation section and process are exclusive to that process. And it does state in there that cannabis processor may use methods of remediation for the purpose of remediation. Or, I mean, in researching remediation machines, there are several states that most of it, or two countries that require remediating cannabis prior to being used. So it's not really meant for remediation. Is this an option that the processing cultivator can use? If it's not for use of remediation, it is something to follow those steps.
Currently, the way we wrote it, it's not, just because, like I mentioned, we were concerned about the record keeping and that ability to move that stuff forward as we go, the way that the state is set up for testing. Obviously, some people are getting their flower tested from the cultivation side for certain things and things like that, but for the most part, what we've been finding is those failures, microbials and things such as that are happening at the processor level, that thing, and then moving it back that way. I'm not 100% sure that the department is against necessarily allowing, through conversation that allowing growers to do that. I mean, I think that our thought in talking to some of the patients that we have been able to talk to and stuff, just really on our personal time, I guess, is that they don't want that. It's not something that they want to have radiation. Again, I talked to a lot of people that's different than some of the rest of you, but we definitely did feel like we wanted to make sure that there was enough controls in there that we knew it was happening and that it was going to get labeled accordingly for the knowledge for patients.
I think just the way it's written, I read it as if they're remediated, they haven't labeled it. If it's being used not for remediation, just to kill all microbials.
It wouldn't be allowed to be
Oh,
used
yeah,
as
that's
cultivator,
not allowed.
period.
Yeah, it's that positive versus negative language type of situation, right? It says anything that's within the medical cannabis statute and rules is pretty much, this is, if you're gonna do it, this is the only way you can do it versus everything else out there that says, so.
And there's the concern here as well that cultivators might use irradiation as a cover for poor cultivation practices. I'm not saying that's a broad concern we have with our specific cultivators, but in the future, that could become a concern where they don't keep their industrial hygiene as good as it should be because they know they can just throw it through the irradiation machine on the way out the door and then pass all their testing anyway.
We're not arguing for the use of irradiation as a company. We did our, I think we due diligence when we first talked about this months ago. It's not something we're interested in using, and speaking with the companies. It is effective, however, I mean, any mildews or molds that are growing in it are still there.
Yeah.
So it is quite visible in the product. It doesn't change the difference. But no, I think that's definitely having it listed on there that it has been treated. If the company is going to utilize this as a remediation process, it's beneficial for patients. The other question I had on there was, I'll do the easy ones and then we'll get some questions. I know that the department has been allowing us when it comes to the warnings for inhalation and vaping. It still says word N. We've talked about it's more of a or because one is vaping and one is inhaling. I mean, is it like, I mean, are you wanting to amend that instead of say N, say or, so probably both sides? Right now, we do have the ability to put one warning on a vape, not having to check the whole.
Oh, you're talking under 4?
4A.
4A.
And the way I remember that was because of the way the statute was written.
Yeah.
You guys had to write the rule that way.
Yeah.
So I think as long as the unwritten rule is still one or the other, depending on the product type, probably okay. But if you guys can't, I don't know if you can make that
Here,
change. Because you have to balance statute.
let us look at statute, and we'll let the processors know.
Yeah, I mean, that's, either way, this way going. Going to go. So.
Yeah.
And then does anyone else have anything to add on number 2? If not, we'll go into strengthening. You have something to add to that? Okay. So strengthening. I understand. Well, can you kind of tell me where is this rule coming into place? Like, what are we concerned with when it comes to strengthening? We don't need to talk about sexual nature. I understand that.
Yeah.
But like, where is this coming from as far as we want to start limiting what strains are seen?
So to be clear, and I think you just highlighted this, the department doesn't want to limit the strains available to patients by any means. But there is a perception, and it especially gets difficult around the legislative session, where we actually get hounded by people up on the hill about the types of products that are available in pharmacies. Some individuals will just go on to the producers' websites or cultivators' websites and look at a bunch of different products. Or actually, they're looking at pharmacies right now, sorry. That was a mistake.
Only way to advertise.
Yeah, wait. They're going to the pharmacy websites, looking at their and seeing gummy bears or, yeah. They're not actually selling gummy bears. It was a stock photo that gets uploaded for any gummy. But then people think that that's available in pharmacies. And it's one thing if a patient thinks that, but when legislators or people that,
Explicitly said Q.
yeah, explicitly said to or don't like the program in general, it kind of creates a bad image for the program. And the same can be said for strain names. When things look overly recreational or I don't know, sexually explicit, anything like that, it just gives the program a bad optics. And also the department gets criticized for not properly policing the industry. And so I do think it is a problem for producers, for patients, and for the department. And again, we don't want to take options away from patients, and we want patients to be able to understand what their strain is. We're just trying to find a way to help it look more professional.
I think one of the concerns that I've talked to others about is there's a lot of individuals that shop strains based off of the type of effects it has on their bodies. And a lot of these genetics have been bred for 30, 40 years. We've got the genetics to run around. Obviously, cannabis 30 years ago was a completely different thing than it is today. And if we're just willy-nilly abbreviating or initializing or changing just the name of the strain, that can completely change in the eyes of the patient what that's going to do and how it's going to help them. And so, I mean, if they're looking for specific things, now again, I know we do have other testing they can look at, such as the terpenes. A lot of shoppers and patients do rely on that information. I think if there's something that's more readily available for patients to see the terpene percentages rather than rely on, if some pharmacies do list it, other pharmacies don't, other than having to go in and ask. My concern with these names is that we're just changing things, it's going to change and it's going to affect patients' ability to shop and what they're looking for.
And yeah, I would just go on to add that, so there's also a concern too. I mean, I do think that there needs to be some amount of control on the strain names of whatever it looks like. And I'm not even necessarily saying the names, because we do have some reports of some producers changing what strain is on there type thing based on either at the cultivation level or at the processing, depending on what type of thing there. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure that there's some patients who can definitely tell, maybe all of them can, those that have been patients for a long time, but it's also a concern that way too. It's kind of how playing at both sides, like we need those strain names because they're so important, but then it's like, well, then why did you change it type of thing? And I'm not saying that's a
There's
overall
also a
problem.
reason for that.
Yeah.
It's not just willy-nilly, right? When you're hunting through hundreds of phenos and you get to select a pheno that is the strain, you still are going to put that into the market, right? And it's going to have a different name, because if it's a whole bunch of different mixed phenotypes, people are not just going to probably just give it that one name. That's why the name is changing. And I'll just say, what is overly recreational sounds so subjective. And I would challenge the department to come forward with 15 strains that are currently in market that are not going to be seen as recreational in nature, right? And so I get lawmakers, I understand perception is everything, right? But I think when you're saying, oh, patients, you can suffer so lawmakers can feel better and we as regulators don't have to have hard conversations, that I think leaves the patients a little bit out in the cold. So now we're going to be told as producers, as a pharmacy, right, in theory, we're going to have to put a list up on our website that is a key that now says, hey, STG is actually this. I just feel like this is another reason for patients to leave our program, not renew their medical cards. That 60% you reported in that report to continue shopping in the black market, continue shopping in other states, because a patient here in Utah will be able to log on to any dispensary website across the country, short of what, maybe Pennsylvania, I think is the only state that's done something somewhat similar. Maybe there's some others that have thought about it. I don't know how many others have done an abbreviation style with strain names. I know Pennsylvania certainly have done it. I don't know whether they still are, But they're gonna be able to go on all these other dispensary websites and see all of this information across the country. So I think in a lot of ways, it's also telling people that go back and shop there, go back into the illicit market, go back to these other states that are not putting these kinds of controls on it. And I'm not saying there's not validity in this. Like, I see where you guys are coming from. I wouldn't want to have those hard conversations with lawmakers either. But these strain names do mean something. And they do pass along the lineage. And where they are behind an age gate, where they're behind a checkbox that says you agree to receive all this information, sometimes even I think some people's websites require actual login to be able to see what is available. I just think that it's a fool's errand to put the onus on the patient to continue chasing this medicine when it's not patients that are reaching out to you. Now, the sexual nature aside, of course,
Yeah.
we've had a couple of strains that have been that way and we've changed the names. We've abbreviated them already. I don't think anyone will fight you on that. But what is recreational in nature? I've said this to you guys before. Brandon, you and I had a discussion about the word hash. I will go to my grave telling you that hash is not inherently recreational. It's existed for thousands of years. Back before cannabis was very potent, that's how people consumed cannabis, was by pressing it into hash, right? That is not a recreational term by its very nature, but you and I have different views. So I think our biggest concern is, where does it stop? Is this essentially just a de facto abbreviation or abbreviation of all these strains, and then it's just the onus is going to fall to the patients? And I just feel like it's another hole to poke in what is already a leaky bucket for people. So I think if you stayed with the sexual in nature or otherwise what is offensive, I think that is probably, it's still subjective, but probably a little less subjective. But recreational in nature, I mean, if the word hash itself is considered recreational, I'm not sure if I can think of too many strain names that exist in the current Utah market that won't be that way. And so I'd rather not confuse patients. And I think there's other ways, like you said, with the stock photo, right? I think there's a way to notify that pharmacy with a letter of concern or even a warning notice. Or if you want to go citation, fine, right? There's, we can ratchet up the levels
Look at that one.
to say, you and I can talk later. But for me, I think there's ways to control those photographs, right? You can notice the pharmacy to say, hey, gelatinous cubes are all that's allowed. You can't put a stock photo up of gummy bears. But really, the people that are getting access to this information and need this information are the patients. And again, I just think it's another way to drive patients out of our program. And we've worked really hard in the last year or so to see that patient base start to grow again, right? You've seen the amount of expirations go down with the yearly cards and some of these other things. This is just another reason to tell people, hey, you gotta be wary of cannabis, the names of it, and all of these things. I just think it's hopefully gonna impact patients the most negatively. And the benefit we get from lawmakers, I think, remains to be seen, because as you know, reefer madness is abound, and someone will find another thing to say is the next public enemy and the scourge of the earth when it comes to cannabis.
Yeah, and this is why we brought forward options or some suggested, because we're not absolutely in love with the idea of abbreviating everything. Like, we really do want input from the board on this so that we can make a decision that will be beneficial to patients, but also protect the program.
And we appreciate that. And the last thing I'll say is I appreciate the willingness to say that, right? Instead of just saying, hey, this is what it's gonna be, that willingness to have discussion, I think goes a long way too.
We've already said names that we can't use, right? And so what if maybe we take because there is a history here and patients that have used cannabis before, or outside of the state, they know these names and they know what works for them. It's pretty devastating when you have a patient that went to the store, bought product, come home and they're like, this is the one that I usually get. This is what I thought it was, and it's not working, and now I have to be paying for a month. And so at that point, then they go back, they get some off the black market, whatever, or they go without. Is there a way that we could, I don't know, educate, and those people that when they come to you with a complaint, you can say, look, this is the history, here is a one-pager and a cookie, you know, and just say like.
Wait, is there cannabis in the cookie?
And then we can just say like, is there a way that we can just offer them the education? Because I think if they understood that these names aren't trying to be recreational, these are attached to history.
And I agree, but we've done that education.
I know they don't.
And
I know.
people don't respond.
And you've got the legislators, which we're all working with on a regular basis anyway, that they understand, right? And then you've got the ones who are just not gonna do it, I
And
mean,
it still comes those last.
squeaky wheel types.
Interesting conversation, and so, I don't know, but I
Make
don't.
them run a bill. I mean, that's me, right? Like, make them run a bill. They have the ability to change the law if they wanna. Look, we've already come up with a no-no list of words that we can't use anymore, right? And I think we can split hairs on many words in that list. I already did, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if that's their prerogative, if they're concerned about that, I think that should be the prerogative of the legislature to do it. I understand where you guys are put in a difficult position. But I just think, again, that is choosing government and bureaucracy over the patients that rely on this program. Right? And it's also just ignoring the history of cannabis. I understand it may seem weird or strange to you, but for us, especially as producers too, we're not speaking in terms of abbreviations or initializing things, right? We're talking about the strains. So I think you could leave it to say, hey, sexual in nature. Those are probably gonna be pretty easy to identify. But if we do recreational in nature and you all remain the end all be all judge, jury, executioner on those, I feel like it's just gonna be a massive fight, and where a patient can go to almost any other state and look at their dispensary websites and everything, or search Leafly, search, all the different places people go to learn about and educate, they're gonna find these names anyway. So I think I'd be on page if, be a little more understanding if it's like, all right, this is the only place people can see these things and we're gonna tamp down on that. There's other sources for the information. So I think all you're doing is walking Utah's program backwards and being less progressive with cannabis, where I think in some ways our program has been a little more progressive in certain ways, right, with things. And I think to walk that back just because there's one or two lawmakers who don't like it, run a bill, get it defeated yourself. Don't make Luz Escamilla, Senator Vickers, all of them just do all the work, or maybe you guys do the bidding for them. If you don't like the strain names, run a bill, take it through the normal legislative process, get you a list of banned strain names. Someone can sit in their basement and Wikipedia, strain names, like I'm sure someone did when they came up with the list of, no words, the banned list. Like that, I think is the proper way for this to happen. And especially where there is nothing in relation to patient health and safety, security of the program, and those types of things, right? And we already are under massive restrictions not to market and appeal to children and stuff like that, right? And that's not going on. And you guys already certainly have control to rein us in if that's the case. I just think this is just a step back in time. At a time that's really unfortunate. We'll get to public comment in a minute.
Yeah.
We'll give you your chance to comment. So
As a patient, I agree. I think changing strain names and abbreviating them could cause a lot of confusion. You've got a lot of names that are similar. They've had similar abbreviations, but the legacy seeds also, there are Reddit groups, there are Discord groups, there are support groups all over listing how this strain has helped them, how this strain has helped them, and they're going to be shopping for those strains in the hopes of finding some sort of help, because there aren't studies, there isn't the information out there for patients to go find what's going to work for me. So you change the names, you're going to be taking a possibility of someone finding the medication that's going to work for them. End of story.
Could I ask where, so we're talking about on the labels right now, where are the patients being able to see the strain names? I asked this.
you talk of the fact
Yeah,
panel, right?
I asked this question not because I know where it's supposed to be as much as,
Trying to catch me up.
no.
No, he's saying what additional places.
Yeah.
Because one of the complaints that we've had in the past is that patients in some aspects don't get to see the product till they're walking out the door, right? So they don't even get to know what's right. And then I walked out the door, it's not what I wanted type of situation type thing. So that's why I asked that question is where is it going to be found, right? Is it the websites as well? Which obviously-
Website and fact panel are the two places where everyone is seeing it,
Right.
as far as I know.
I'll just add.
Because I have less problem, and I don't have a problem either way, I should have said it that way, but because it's right now, we're talking about the label type thing, and no one should be doing, who knows what happens at home, we all understand that. I'm sure there's nobody smoking flower in the state, because it's illegal.
They don't do that.
I know.
Good.
Yeah.
So, type of thing, so that's just food for thought type of situation, right? Type of thing.
So in theory, it sounds like label because only a patient's gonna see it, might be an okay place. You could probably work to where on a website, you can't see any product names, or if it's gonna be public facing, about having to log in or do something. See, what I'm saying is I think there's some control short of just going down this really drastic route that we could stop short of and not be an example of, just walking cannabis, back in the wrong direction. Because if the concern is, oh, hey, a child's gonna get to see this, a disgruntled regulator, or excuse me, disgruntled lawmaker, close, wrong one. You guys are just in front of me right now. Or a person from the public, right, is gonna get to see it. Okay, I understand that that is a concern, but I think there's some control short of that. What this is gonna do is this is gonna change it for those people's benefit to the detriment of 80-some thousand people. And I can't imagine trying to create a key on your website and try to keep it up to date. And as Nanette said, there's gonna be some that are similar, so, all right, so Raspberry Kush is archaic, but then what if I have something that's the same thing, it's then 3 letters instead of 2 and whatever, like, I just think, and look, I've even gone and looked at the dispensary pages in Philadelphia, you know, and in Pennsylvania. I'm here to tell you, I can't tell what it is, you know what I mean, from the abbreviation, or what they'll do is they'll print the words with no vowels in it. And I think even then, sometimes you're like, okay, you know what I mean? So no matter how they've done it, I don't think it's proven to be successful. And ultimately, those same people that are complaining about this are gonna see it anywhere, you know, anywhere else. So.
Just one thought that if I could add is that on the websites, the primary bolded text that shows up about products, if it's flour, it's the strain, right? When you get the actual product, physical product container, you don't see that strain, but in fine print on the back on a product panel. But if you go online, your visual goes right to that strain name. So we've got in bold letters words like ice cream cake, candy lantern, right? A bunch of candy related words. And I see this like our umbrella of recreational, and then within recreational, there's a few groups, and one of those groups is candy. Do you agree? Right. It's a big group. There's a ton of strains that are called candy, and there's substrains, right? There's glue sniffer, there's pina colada, right? Strawberry starburst, strawberry icy, rainbow runs, Oreos, white gushers, watermelon slushy, Tropicana cookies. That's what it says in bold. Now you have to get through a wall to get there. I get it. But rather than just on a fine print back panel, this is what this product is. It is white gushers.
So when you have it at home, you're gonna be struggling to see what you're trying to.
Sure.
And I guess my question for you is,
Right.
what is the problem with patients who are looking to purchase medical cannabis, seeing that information? And if we take steps to prevent those who are under 21 or who are otherwise not patients, and there's other things they have to click on, all we're doing is preventing them from coming to Wholesome Co's website or any other Dragonfly's website, any other pharmacy's website, and seeing that there. They can go see it throughout the rest of the country and on other dispensary websites. They could search the names of all those things. You're not getting rid of the name. And the strain name is where you start. People look at the strain name, they then take that strain name and go do their research. Yeah, people will scroll down and look at the terpene percentages and those types of things.
Sure. But not in the beginning.
All of that, that's not where people start. People start with the strain name. And again, if this is what is being shown specifically to medical cannabis patients who are looking to purchase products, I don't see the issue. I understand you don't like those names, or some folks might not like those names and how they develop. I'm also here to tell you that some of those things in strain names talk about the flavor profile of cannabis. So in some of those, they're talking about the terpenes. Because believe it or not, some of those things taste like those names.
When you said.
And so it's important that we don't disrupt this, all because a lawmaker feels this is not medicinal. Cannabis existed long before we grouped it into medicine and recreational, and the strain names have evolved over time. I understand they're goofy to some, but they have a meaning with them. And to get rid of those from patients, it just doesn't seem to make sense. So I think what I would prefer, and I'll, talk to Tom today, because obviously kind of, some real strong opinions about this, but I'd love to hear what others feel like. I feel like there's ways short of this that we could control for this. And it might not ultimately make lawmakers happy, but that's why they are elected officials that can run bills with votes and get it to pass or not. And I guess I would ask you, have any of the governance working group members, other than it being mentioned by someone else to them, have any of them individually come to you and said, hey, this is a real, public, policy thing that we need to address, that they're not just hearing from another lawmaker?
I don't know that anybody on the specific cannabis board did.
Well, I'll open it up to anyone else who wants to talk about this one. I do have one other one I wanted to ask about, just to get some clarification. If anyone wants to talk about this or anything else, in either rule, please do so amongst the board. We'll go to public comment after that. Okay, I'll go with my last one. So just on that cannabis processing facility and QR codes and stuff, that's just basically in lieu of a barcode. You would use a QR code instead of a barcode for purposes of being able to scan it in to make a sale or something. So that would then, the barcode would just link to the ICS, or excuse me, the QR code would link to the ICS as opposed to the barcode. And it's because barcodes wrap around and are difficult to scan sometimes. That we were just, as a team, we were kind of wondering what that kind of meant. So that was my one question.
May I ask some clarification?
Mhm.
So are we being asked to make a recommendation that line 20, we were speaking of previously about the labeling, be in some way changed to explicit or sexual in nature?
Essentially, I would like some recommendation from the board, especially on that.
Or would another one be strike that entirely? Or-
Yeah, you could do anything you want. You can recommend whatever you want for.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what we would do is just roll out public comment and then we can get to sort of recommendation. That was pretty that is degree and stuff. And that goes for anything that's. I wouldn't know if anyone wants to change
I just
that.
wanted to
Incorrect rules. Yes, we can take action.
And I want to make sure there was nothing preventing us from reading the recommendation. Or amended.
Okay, any more questions on or comments from the board on either this rule or the quality assurance testing?
On number 13, it might be way out there on the third, R66-2 probably 14 on the QR code.
Mhm.
Is there any way for patient access to a COA at that same time? Of doing that?
We're working on that.
Cool.
We do want to have that in the
That'd be
future.
amazing. So
Yes,
I-
that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get our own ICS system so we can control that.
my own request
Because honestly,
for patient.
given where you guys have gone with QR codes, obviously people using them and then them taking people to a landing page that they can navigate away from was obviously popular. And may not, probably is prohibitive to do it, just to a landing page like that. We thought about either like COA libraries and stuff like that, but it would be nice if the department is going to have, where a patient can access that, because right now, you as a patient can come request it from our pharmacy. Some people have QR codes to link to it, but those are kind of going by the wayside after the department kind of, gave their final interpretation of it. So it would be helpful if you all would do that, because it is one thing that's nice about Utah's program is being able to get access to COAs, at the patient level. So,
Well, and certainly from a research perspective too, if we were eventually going to be transferring things for research purposes, we would definitely want a certificate of analysis and be able to access that.
Yeah, we definitely want to make those more available. They've always been somewhat available, but our intent in the long term is to make them very available to anyone interested.
Well, there's actually also it's for terpenes, and most of them obviously are listed on the COAs that pharmacy gives those to patients. That thing, there's been a little bit of struggle in getting that information sometimes, and so the department really does feel if we can come up with something that gets complete access to patients on COAs, would be nice, whether it's through our website or through QR, whatever it is, to make sure patients are getting exactly what they need or what they want.
And I think in the long term, having that available to patients can always, quantify the terpenes. That's when we can start, if we choose, to start moving away from weird names. But in this period, we have to be able to identify. So I just think terpenes are maybe the way of the future, but right now.
Okay, so I lied. I have one more. I forgot about targeted marketing.
Oh.
I did want to clarify, just because when we as a board made the recommendation around targeted marketing to the legislature, the discussion in this room was mostly around the idea of being able to use websites. Process was being able to use websites, of course, obviously appropriately age gated, a checkbox to be able to see that information. Right now, I think for pharmacies, that is what is going on, right? I know there are comms being sent out to patients, right? They've signed up and consented and done all this stuff. But the way the law defines it is electronic communication. I'm assuming, but I want to get you all's take on it, that you guys are considering a website, as pharmacies doing, targeted marketing, that's considered the electronic communication or a form of electronic communication. I think what we want is just that same understanding.
Because the issue with that is, that thing, and we can discuss whether, the issue is that there's also a portion of the statute that says that a producer cannot advertise any products or any devices or anything else. So that's where the cross comes into. The statute still says that you are not allowed to advertise certain things.
But if done under targeted marketing, it is not advertising. Because isn't that, because it does say generally, we as a pharmacy can't mass advertise to the general public, products, discounts, incentives, all those things. That same thing would also applies in terms of advertising to producers. What we tried to do was carve out that targeted marketing for processors in the same way as pharmacies. So as long as that is what the understanding is, and a processor can maintain a website, as long as it follows all the same parameters of targeted marketing for a pharmacy, that I know is what this group discussed, and I believe, anyone please correct me if I'm wrong, that is what a lot of our decision and our recommendation hinged on, was allowing processors under the same guise and or guidelines as pharmacies to engage in targeted marketing, short of providing price,
Right.
discounts, incentives, those things. But it still is a game of who produces what, who does what. And I think to say like, oh, well, processor, you can send out an electronic communication to who? They don't have a patient list, right? They need to have some way to build up a clientele or a patient base using a website. And if that's all behind the wall, right, you have to go in, you have to set up a profile, all of those things. At the very least, we should be able to do that. And that's also why I brought up the idea of, as we move into Schedule 3, I did a little bit of rudimentary research, today before I came, there are advertising allowances for Schedule 3 substances and other prescribed substances. So that's the direction that the country is going to move in here within the next 6-ish months, unless something crazy happens. To where we're going to have to start thinking of cannabis as, in that vein in some ways, right? So I think that, as we as the board, obviously I know you guys are free to accept or reject our recommendations because we're just an advisory board, but I think that's what we intended as a board, was at least to allow processors to have websites to provide information regarding their products, controlled in the same way as a pharmacy. So I guess my question to you all is, do you not interpret that the same way? So our processors not going to be allowed to maintain websites, because otherwise, what are they going to be allowed to do?
Yeah, so what are they allowed to do, is what I'll answer. Firstly, it does say, and to your point, the electronic communication to an individual is at least 21 years old, is part of that definition. An in-person marketing event that is held inside a medical cannabis pharmacy and in the area where only card holders may access. Other marketing material that is physically available or digitally displayed in a medical cannabis pharmacy, or a leaflet medical cannabis pharmacy places in the opaque package or box that is provided to an individual when obtaining medical cannabis. In the medical cannabis pharmacy, at the medical cannabis pharmacies, drive-through pickup window, or in a medical cannabis shipment. And one of the reasons why we somewhat think differently than what you're saying, JD, is because 4-41A 403 does say that producers can maintain a website, but says there's only things that can be on there.
But that's for purposes of advertising, not targeted marketing. That's the thing I've always tried to say is they split out targeted marketing to allow you to do those things directly to patients or folks of a certain age who have consented to do those things that you can't do as part of general advertising. So I think we were of the understanding, and maybe it's going to take a statutory change, and we'll have to work that out. But the way I see it is, we recommended that processors be allowed to engage in targeted marketing in the same way as pharmacies, short of giving information regarding pricing, discounts, incentives. So if you right now allow a pharmacy to maintain a website and engage in targeted marketing through that, it would seem to make sense that that same thing should apply to a processor. And I would think it's under that concept of an electronic communication. Now, maybe that needs to be, modified. But if that can be the understanding until we get to a change, because otherwise, I'm going to let some processors that are here today talk about this. The way I read it, there's not you basically are going to be able to send an email or a text message to, I don't know. You can come to the pharmacy. The pop-ups I think will be helpful, right? I think it'll be nice to see those be able to return. But then that same processor can leave materials behind that can then be given to patients purchasing there, or patients purchasing through home delivery or through a drive-through. Those people can get access to that stuff at the pharmacy from the processor, but processors themselves can't maintain a website. Like, you're really making the processors then beholden to those pharmacies that they can get into to do pop-ups in, those that they can get into to provide the, they have to come up with little postcards and leaflets and those things. They can't just maintain a website. And I think if we're already allowing it for pharmacies, I mean, someone jump in here unless I'm, if I'm talking out of school, but I think that's what we envisioned, was allowing them to at least just maintain a website. So if we could get a working understanding, that yeah, we'll work on a statutory change to make sure that's what it is. But for now, that electronic communication could involve, a website, an age-gated, consent website, or where you even have to log in, right? Even if you're concerned that, hey, a 5-year-old kid can check the box on 21 and consent, they have to set up a profile. Maybe, maybe that's the answer. But I think without that, I think processors are a significant disadvantage, especially those that don't have any connection. They're independent processors who don't have a connection to every pharmacy, right? You can't get in and do a pop-up right away, or don't have the resources to be able to print, a bunch of postcards and other materials. We're already allowing it to get to patients. I just think if we can come to some sort of kind of, agreement that, yeah, we need to work on a statutory change, but until then, the way we interpret it and the way we're going to enforce it is processors can maintain websites. I think that's what the board's recommendation really was.
We can certainly understand where you're coming from with that. We'll probably need to talk to our attorneys and do some further discussions before we can commit to anything.
Understood. No, I appreciate you guys hearing this out. Okay, I promise that's my last one on this. Okay, anything else from the board? Okay, I think we'll open it up to public comment. We have 2 here in the room. Do we have any online? It looks like it. Okay, if any pop up as we go into public comment, just let me know. We will start with Mayor Pond from Dragonfly.
Yeah, I'll ask you to defer my time because you actually addressed the very topic that I was concerned that I use a lack of clarity in terms of that. Actually, maybe we'll just.
Yeah, come on. Introduce yourself, say who you're from.
Yeah, we were just seeking clarity in regards to this rule into targeted marketing, because in previous statute, there was a section related to advertising. That now defers to the Utah administrative rules, which defers back to the definition of targeted marketing. So where it reads, where the concern comes is in section 2G, where it says you may not display medical cannabis products or images of products where the advertisement is visible to members of the public. And again, that definition of public is an age-gated website considered access to the public. So that's where, in combination with what JD is saying, is that basically allows a processor to do nothing, right? If that is considered access to the public, then you can't even display a product. And the concern there from a processor perspective is we have no ability to grow our market outside of the existing patient base. So if there are patients outside of Utah's medical program that are interested because one particular processor uses a very proprietary technique, maybe uses solventless techniques, and they're looking for that, there's actually no way for them to find that product. You have to be a patient in the program. So that's the interest of allowing processors, is to provide more awareness. Because right now we kind of operate like it's Fight Club, right? Like, you don't know about cannabis unless you're already in the program, right? Unless you went through the hoops, jumped through the hoops, talked to a doctor, got your card, went to a pharmacy, and then saw all these products. And luckily to sign up for a list to find out, we're not growing our market. And that's our concern with the study that was going, is we are losing 50,000 patients that would otherwise be Utah patients. And we have a strong belief that those patients are spending their money in illicit markets and spending their money in neighboring states. And that's not anecdotal evidence. You can drive up to Deep Roots Harvest and you can see every single vehicle in that parking lot is from Utah. They are not serving Nevada residents.
You're
right?
time. You want more time?
Yes, if I could ask for another minute.
We'll give you that.
So I think that's generally the concern of where we're at, is we are desperately trying to keep our own residents in our own state where we know product is safe, it is tested, it is regulated, because outside of these states, it is not. We know we're surrounded adult use states that it's a pay to play game, that every state has 30% THC. I don't think so. So what do other patients compare us against? You have poor quality product because you can't grow 30% THC. And if us as a program stood behind the quality of our testing, right? Stand behind our products, stand behind Utah's own products and support that, we have a lot more patients supporting Utah's programs. So thank you. I yield my time. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, next on the list is, Justin Ariola.
You guys covered a lot of topics, so I'm kind of just hoping I can get 2 minutes on the strain names and the COA discussions, the target marketing stuff.
Yep.
And then maybe one on that irradiated products, but I'll let that be up to the chairman. So first, in regard to the cultivars, cultivar names have a lot of heritage behind them. And I understand that there's some amount of discomfort in regard to like the sexual nature, and that's kind of a no-brainer. But when we talk about like candy, gas, those type of things, like the glue, that actually comes from initially there being a candy smell and it being one type of an effect, a gas or a gluey smell. That was another type of effect. And so very early on, those two terms were used to kind of say, okay, this one's going to keep me on the couch. This one's going to be more mentally uplifting. And so that heritage is kind of trickled in. Now, some of the names, the Starburst and some of that, yeah, I understand where there's some discomfort there. But it doesn't just impact patients. So those cultivar names are very educational, but it's also B2B. So when I go to Wholesome or I go to Dragonfly and I say, hey, I need cannabis for processing products, and this is the type of product that I need to produce, I already know that there are some genetics and names, because whether we all want to admit this or not, all of the genetics that are here in state are coming from out of state. There is no breeding program here. Nobody, now that we've got people that are up and running, some of them are kind of doing pheno hunts, but most of that came from out of state. And so it's very hard to scrub that once you get in. A lot of that history is going to be lost, and a lot of the information that is, pertinent to me as a producer for a product that I'm looking to specific, regard of effect, that could potentially be impactful to the type of products that we create. Further, the COAs and the website stuff, the targeted marketing. We currently have citation right now where we were targeted just for having a QR code that potentially goes to a landing page where we don't have any, we have a zero website presence. We just wanted to link to COAs. So when we talk about giving processors the ability to educate patients, being able to put in online a COA is very, very important.
You're at time, Commissioner.
Okay, yes, please. I think, where we talk about marketing versus education, we have to be really careful about what we're considering marketing versus education, specifically when, if you have a website that only has COAs and there's no other website presence, there's no way for them to go and look at pictures of people using products. Why are we impacting a business that's trying to educate and give specific terpene profiles for different products? Or why are we penalizing people for putting that online somewhere that patients can easily access? It seems like having that information easily accessible for patients is very beneficial to the program. And so I'd just like the board to have some insight and some opinion on that. And then the last thing real quick is irradiated product. There are other devices that we consider radiation, but it's actually light frequencies that are non-ionizing that I think we should be able to look to utilize. And it seems to be better to prevent that than to treat it once it's failed. If you have a small amount of microbials, but you pass and then it sits on the shelf, we all know microbials grow, right?
Okay,
And so as
that's-
preventative,
that's
that may be something to be considered.
Yeah, no, much appreciated. Thank you. Looks like we have one online, I believe, who had their hand raised. So we'll go ahead and take you off mute, and you can take 2 minutes to make your comment. Please introduce yourself, and who you're affiliated with before making your comment. Did they lower their hand? Michelle. No.
Can you all see me and hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right, thank you. Michelle McComber with the Utah Medical Association. We do have concerns with candy names. I mean, I listened to the discussion and I can see the side that you're coming from, but I do think this warrants more discussion about what's important in terms of making sure that patients know what they're getting, but also making sure that we aren't appealing under candy to particularly children. In terms of advertising or targeted marketing, we are a little, and I would ask a question, why would the processor need to advertise to patients as opposed to the patient who goes in and gets a recommendation going into a pharmacy and then getting the product? And then the third thing that I would like to just talk about is, you know, there's concern that the market may not be growing or may be diminishing a little bit in terms of patients on medical marijuana. But, you know, as new medications come out, there is a right sizing to a market. There may be a rush to use a particular medication to begin with, but then there may be a right sizing to a market. So just want you to consider those things and continue discussing with us and others the concerns that we have for some of these issues that have been discussed today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. All right, any further public comment? All right, any further discussion from the board? Otherwise, you know, we probably can take action if someone wants to make a motion. Assuming someone wants to, obviously we can let it pass and do nothing. I think there's more conversation to be had here on some of these things. But I also think, you know, a recommendation would be in order as well. So, and this is for either rule, right? You can make a recommendation as to the, you know, to the QA QC rule, quality assurance testing, or to the processor rule. You know, and probably maybe one motion per like recommendation, so we don't kind of stack them, so we can do individual motions. I think it's better.
Yeah.
To figure out what's what. But yeah, that's happy to do that. If not, no one has a motion. Maybe have to take one.
So I just have one quick comment on the strain names, and for me, it's gonna be an educational issue because I still kind of struggle with how a strain name named Oreo, what the history is and how I need to know about that. So JD might be something I need to get you up and spend some time with you to get a better understanding of that.
Sure thing.
But for me now, whatever the vote's gonna be, I think there is some room to kind of self-regulate and get rid of some of these things. I love it like that's everything. That was understanding. So that would be my vote, whatever strength. I think there is some room to kind of some self-regulation. I think that the Department of Ag and kind of, you know, regulating internally and regulating internally inside is really better than just saying, hey, pass legislation. But sometimes that's easier to change admin rule than state law. So kind of my positions.
Appreciate you. Any more comment?
I did have one thought on this speak. In terms of these names, the recreation staff, candy names and all, without you know, destroying, you know, the history and everything behind them. If online, if it did need to be abbreviated, if you were to cover over the abbreviation in the full strain name, would that be enough to appease some of the concerns? Whereas the full strain name isn't right there in the face of the viewer on the computer, where if they hover over it, they would see the full strain name to the font and just have the an abbreviated, acceptable abbreviation. People's first, you know, just a thought.
I mean, I'm sure it could happen, right? But I mean, again, that's just another requirement for pharmacies on websites to spend more money, you know, on their website to make it that way. And look, I think for me, it's one of two things. It's either we strike, you know, we move to strike number 20 altogether, or we move to table for further discussion. And it's hopefully not included in the rule that gets published here in what 13 or so days, you know, on the first. Because if it doesn't warrant further discussion, because where I stand right now, just personally, I think it should be stricken. I don't see a good reason for it. Candy or not, any of this stuff or not. This is intended for adults. There's no one out here actively marketing to children. regardless of what the name of it is or not. It's all behind age gates, it's all behind, it's all consented to for all the stuff to see. The people going to find this are patients here in Utah, and when the information is readily available across the rest of the country, I don't think you're stopping people from getting access to the information. All you're doing is telling Utah patients to jump through another hoop so we can right-size the program. I don't think that's what that is. You've seen patients are leaving the program not because cannabis isn't working for them, it's other reasons. So that's not a right sizing, right? In my own personal opinion. And so I would move to strike it. If not, I think that the middle ground here is to move to table this portion of the rule until there can be some further discussion and some really some discussion on other ways we might achieve the same objective without having to just take another swing at the patient population. So that's just kind of where I stand on it.
Really, to spread for recreational.
Could do that as well.
Thank you.
Yep, you could do that as well.
Real quick, just to clarify, going through this rule, I know you have the QR thing for the pharmacies to scan. But in line 5, processor already added QR code with the links to the CLA. So is there gonna be, 2 QR codes on there? Potentially?
Potentially, yeah.
We have to label those correctly.
Yeah, hopefully they know when we scan it, which we're not, otherwise it'll be a hassle with the pharmacy.
Good idea.
No, there's nothing better than a question, I'm going to make a motion, I think. I think there's a lot of substantive information that we want to get moving on. I feel kind of. Hopefully, I made my motion on here, is I make a motion that we remove, the word recreational or. And it just, that now states string names on cannabis product packaging or labeling that, are sexually limited. As determined by the Department of I think there's. Obviously, based on comments and what have been said, there was a brief that and that portion of the rule, I don't think we need to lay that. I think that will get into and then any discussion based off of what the product before the pharmacy side, as far as the visibility of the patients, not the processor has no control over what's on the
Okay, we have a motion to amend subsection 20 to remove the words recreational or and leave the rest of the language intact. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Having you please take a roll call.
Ken Anderson,
Yes.
Nanette Baresi. Yes. Tammy Clark. No, I don't believe that should be removed. Desiree Hensey. Yes. Jimmy Higgs.
No.
JD Grossman.
Just say it, I don't like it at all. So I abstain. I have to vote, because I would like to make another, I'd like to make a counter motion to remove this entirely from the rule.
You either abstain or say no.
And then we
And
can go
make
on your
that
motion.
motion. Yeah.
Even if it passes though, I mean, yeah, I think I. Because that's the one that, like, the recreational nature is, I think, the one that is the most problematic, in there, right? Because I just don't know where it ends. But I don't like the idea of any of these things being limited. I think I have constitutional concerns and some other things as well. So my vote is no. But the reason my vote is no is not because I think that language should stay in there, but it's because I think it should be sure.
Chris Moran. Matt Page.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes. Okay, we can turn now to the next. And are there any other motions that anyone would like to make in relation to either rule?
Couldn't there still be a motion made? Well, I think we should have considered all motions before having one. Because I think the bigger issue is there needs to be further discussion.
So under Robert's rules, if you make a motion, can someone also then make another motion before you vote? Like an amendment, but that would then just be amending their motion, right?
Not what.
Because we've just never had it where we've had competing motions like that, right? So in your, on the other boards, on the board, the other board you sit on, if someone makes a motion, can someone then make a counter motion? And then you discuss both motions before taking, but then which motion do you vote on? First one made?
Trying to think that ever. Do you know? Yes,
So I should have made a substitute motion?
But you can make a motion to reconsider the action.
Let's go ahead and do that. I make a motion to reconsider the prior vote or the prior motion that was, to reconsider the prior motion.
and I would second that to reconsider.
Okay? Will you take the roll call vote, please?
Wait, what?
So this is a motion to reconsider the prior motion. Okay?
Okay, Kenzie Anderson,
Yes.
Nana Borosny, yes. Kenny Clark, yes. Desiree, Jenny Hicks, J.D. Lorenzen,
Yes.
Chris Morgan,
Yes.
Matt Page,
Yes.
Misty Smith.
Yes,
Okay, so now
Now you make your,
you make the substitute motion.
I make, I would make a motion, sure, this should be tabled for further discussion. Frankly.
Okay, so we have a motion to table. Is it to table our recommendation? Because I guess the question is going to be to the regulators. Is if we table this for further discussion, is this just going to show up in the bulletin in 13 days?
Yeah, tomorrow we're public.
I know the dates. I know it's not going to be 19. I know it's the first or the 15th.
but if we go with the other motion, then they can, then you take out the word recreational and put that one in the bulletin.
Well,
I'm more.
they don't have to do anything.
I understand. They don't have
This is
to
an advisory board, so, yeah.
We wouldn't have asked if we didn't want to split on.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that that's, look, like I said, right now I'm in a place where I don't want it in there at all. But I think we are all open to further discussion. If we could agree to table it to next month. Like, I don't think we plan to hold this up for forever, but I think there's some ways short of this that we can solve for this. It doesn't just capitulate to hurting patients and making lawmakers feel comfortable about cannabis.
Right, there's definitely rich history there that I think we discussed.
We'll just have to change.
Or you want
Like, we don't wanna
the entire rule?
file the rule back to back to back. 'Cause
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the
that's
thing's
not a
gonna be is,
Well-
I mean, would you hold off on filing the rule until after the next meeting? Is that what you prefer? If we table it and decide not to move forward on this portion,
Are you going to have a more
Well,
productive?
I know that the board at one point recommended that we don't change rules more than once a year, but we could probably. Change them.
But just one thought is. One thing to think about is there is a public comment that they could hold a hearing. And comments could be shared at that hearing. And then if ag feels strongly about something later on, while things are filed, they can amend and refile to change it. If that would be their choice, if they chose to do
but
that.
then we don't get the benefit of being able to make a recommendation before the rule's published. And that has been my problem the whole time along, and why I appreciate that that's what's become the norm in the procedure. Because I know once something's on paper, it's hard to get ink off of paper, right? And there's a whole thing we'd have to go through. And I know we're advisory, but this seems like this is something where the department wants to work in in a similar direction. We may not come to the same conclusion. But is there a world where we could hold, I mean, you don't want to hold, are you interested in holding up the entire rule till next month? Or do you want to publish the portions without sub 20? And then we come to sub 20, you'd be back to back rules in a month or 2 months.
Depends on what we decide, but I think that at least me personally, not speaking as part of my job at the department, not for the department where I'm speaking at right now, but to at least hold off on that portion for further discussions. I obviously, as you all know, don't have any problems opening rules up multiple times if we need to. And I'd say that
From the horse's mouth.
you know, I know, but actually I don't like it. I just don't have mind it. It's what has to happen. So I don't have a problem moving forward with anything that we feel comfortable with and withholding back anything that we don't. To be honest with you, I'm not looking forward to the arguments that come up with this type of thing either. And I'm definitely not open to me having to submit things to DTS saying I'm gonna look up sexual in nature stuff on my computer all the time. The drug related stuff's terrible enough.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay,
It
so
is.
we would make a motion to table this portion of the rule for further discussion either next month or in the future. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and make that motion to table the board's recommendation, you know, around. Let's make sure we got this, all the numbers correct. So the proposed R66-2 15 subsection 20 regarding the strain names for cannabis products. I would table it for further discussion amongst the board as well as the department, of course, as part of that. You know, we would ask, you know, advise, you know, the department against including it in the rule publish, you know, here in the next 13 days or so. Okay, we have a motion and second. Adam, you please take a roll call vote.
Jesse Anderson,
Yes.
Nana Arosmi, yes. Maggie Clark, yes. Desiree Hennessy, yes. Jimmy Higgs.
Yes.
JD Royston,
Yes.
Chris Morgan,
Yes.
Matthew Page,
Yes.
and Missy Smith.
Yes. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We can figure out who you all need to strategize next month. Talk to Matt and to Des about how they want to handle it. But I have to provide some, you know, our own commentary as well to you. So.
Do we need to make a vote on the rules at all in general? Say we're good with the other ones, step 3, the recommendation.
I mean, we don't need to, because again, you've heard the advisory board for the time today. But we don't necessarily need to, but if you feel like you'd like to make that motion, we're open to a motion to make a recommendation. So. Okay, we will move on to the final substantive item on our agenda, which is qualified medical provider continuing education requirements. There was a memo that was circulated. A big thank you to Candy and Chris for working on this. I imagine in conjunction with Trevor as well. And just happy to allow you all to present on it. I don't think there's going to be any sort of recommendation or anything that comes from this. It looked like there was a proposal, but happy to turn it over to Dr. Morgan and Ms. Buck to present.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if there are any people who are come up with this in terms of meeting particular types of questions or recommendations. I mean, there may come some in the future, but to give most of the credit where the credit's due, Trevor really got a lot of this information pulled together for us, and he and I went through it, but essentially, I don't think there's a whole lot of concerns with this. I know, I think a few people in the industry did weigh in. I believe Michelle McComber did get back with you, Trevor. I couldn't find that email, but and then Dr. I think it's Chung with Lotus did have some concerns about potential increased costs for student fees in terms of the cost of their CEs going up, but there are to be much changes made or requirements in terms of what needs to be added. So there are changes with this. Personally speaking, I've taken the CE course 3 times, my initial and 2 renewals, and I did mine through the same provider. I believe there's 4 CE providers. They're in the state, 2 of which are more national providers, medical marijuana 411 and the other page, correct. The other two are local, Intermountain as well as University of Utah have their own programs. I've done them all three of them through the University of Utah. And all three of those times that I took that course, I believe I was watching the same videos all three times, with the exception there, was some updates on the legislative changes and all. My only wish is that the legislative changes would be more visible, knowing what was the old rule versus the new. That would be more something on the educators and to be able to delineate the old rules versus new rules, so there's no confusion when QMPs are taking the renewal courses. What really has changed since they last renewed? Because these are only required every 2 years. You could have two, possibly more legislative changes depending on if it becomes up in a major, legislative section. So for myself, I don't have a whole lot of concerns with this. Just for those that might be online and listening, QMP is required to complete for a minimum of a 4-hour approved DHS approved course to become certified to make a medical cannabis recommendation. And the renewal courses are due every 2 years and also require 4 hours of education. I'm not so certain that the renewal requires 4 hours because there's really not a whole lot of change that happens from year to year. I mean, maybe 2 hours would be sufficient to cover any particular legislative changes that may be possible. Updates to pharmacology and stuff, there's no doubt it's going to change from year to year, really. But I guess there's 40 states, right, that have a medical cannabis program. Only 11 of those require their QMPs to take a course of certified to do so. And those requirements for those education courses range from there 1 hour to 8 hours. So Utah's right in the middle of it. So I'm not complaining about that. There'd be much use. And it really isn't all that expensive to do. But as far as some concerns, she just left. I was going to bring something to that now as a patient. But the courses really are intended for the QMPs to have a basic or a minimum amount of information to make a good recommendation for a patient to use medical cannabis to rule out any particular contraindications or anything that could possibly make it dangerous for a patient to use. And to know enough about medical cannabis, how it works, pharmacokinetic basis, pharmacotherapeutic basis, and make potentially make some recommendations on what works to use for patients, given the qualifying condition they're experiencing. And I was going to tell her to Nanette, she thought her QMP was qualified when she first met with them, had the knowledge they needed to give her a proper recommendation and potential treatment plan for that. So I was thinking maybe opening up to a roundtable if there's any thoughts or discussions or any concerns that anybody else has brought forward. That would be great. I do want to turn some time over to Camille from the mental health center there. I believe Michelle may have mentioned something in her response about mental health education concerns with this as well. So can you go ahead and turn it over to you?
I was able to look at the slides from the training from the University of Utah, and I did feel like they appropriately covered concerns regarding contraindications related to mental health and substance use disorders. But I don't know what the other providers' trainings really look like, so I can't really speak to that. But I did feel like it was an appropriate coverage that provided the information, that really covered, harm reduction and assessing risk in those areas. So I thought they did a good job at the U. But I share kind of the questions about patient experience and how they view their QMP. And, if they notice things that they thought, I wish my QMP knew this or could answer these questions or approach
these issues in this way or that way. I think really a patient experience sort of feedback would be really important in this area, because they're the ones that are really, like, the QMP is their gateway. And so their feedback would be incredibly important when shaping these training sessions.
Did you guys, you looked at all, probably didn't, you just know generally how good the medical schools and these pharmacy schools, those different things, how good they do in terms of the general education around endocrine system and cannabis and those types of things? Is I feel like that might be helpful as well, right? So people aren't coming to this brand new, being 4 hours of education, you know, and like often recommend you guys look at that, all the Utah schools kind of stack up in terms of education.
I haven't looked at the curriculums, I just know that it's way different now than it was 20 years ago.
I can comment on the college of pharmacy and school of dentistry, at least. I'm not familiar with what the school of medicine is currently incorporating into their curriculum. But in the college of pharmacy, we have, within the pain module, a dedicated to cannabinoids. And we have 2, pharmacists working in the field, and then, are part of that lecture as well. And then in the school of dentistry as well, they actually talk about it during the pain module as well. Like that, so it's addressed in both those professional programs.
We did add 3 years ago, so that with cannabis education, we part of like now CME, so they made that
Normal.
like just a normal.
In the controlled substance,
Yeah,
when you get your controlled substance license, there is a little portion of that training that you're required to do in order to maintain your controlled substance license. That covers at least a little bit of cannabis.
so even with control substance license,
It's there, it's very,
Right.
there's just
It's
a
very-
sliver, yeah.
see, and that kind of, I wish they would make that more robust, and then eventually we could just say, if you have a controlled substance license, this is, you're treating the same. You know, I really treat on cannabis as well, people just use more.
What brings us back to qualifying conditions.
I know.
As well, which, no, we need to continue the conversation because another state just determined that, yes, they have a numeric list, what was it, Hampshire? Some state or Maine?
Connecticut.
Yeah, right, yeah, it's on the governor's desk for signature. But what they've done is they have a provision, right? They have a list of qualifying conditions, and then they have the last one that says, or any other condition, essentially the doctor thinks the patient can work with them. And it's like, I think moving in that direction is good. That's why I asked that question, right? Is the more I think we teach about it at the university level and the graduate level, the more we treat cannabis like any other medical, treatment. I think what you're saying also makes sense to say too, like the education should keep up with the times, and should continue to evolve. But that 4 hours, while I don't want to subject it more, it suggests there should probably be more in the formalized training of medical professionals who are going to come in contact with it, whether they are patients using it or whether they are people that purchase it from the illicit market or whatever. Cannabis is a mainstay, in society regardless. So that's why I asked that question, is to just see how prevalent it is. Because I know at some point you asked about people, they didn't start teaching about the system until just a few years ago.
And the discussion I had with Trevor is that one concern is we have 4 CD providers for this, 2 of which are national. Those 2 are not going to update information.
Well, they actually do.
Do they really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we
Yeah, that was my-
give them a certain amount of
I
time.
know, I've seen the changes, the small changes in the program that I've taken myself. I'm just not sure. Because I know the statute lists the bare minimum that needs to be in there, and they can add more. And I think, my program is 4.75. So there's a little bit more in the course that I took than what the state requires as a minimum. But as far as the other 3 providers, I don't know, if there's some that's just even if it's a minimum and not adding any additional on there, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I believe those CE courses should be focused primarily on making the recommendation safely, as well as focusing on any particular legislative requirements that the CQMP has to apply, whether it's contraindications to making the recommendation versus advertising changes. But when I take that course, I just want to make details. I want to know what I need to know for my patient.
Right.
The history behind medical cannabis, I don't care, honestly, you know, what they were doing 2,000 years ago, they might make it a half slide, and that's fine. But it doesn't need to be a whole, you know.
Yeah, and what we made clear in the requirements is that you don't, you could complete a course that is ACCME accredited. That is not one of the four. But has that accreditation, so it's been vetted, that covers the topics in our statute. And, someone could do that and complete the CE requirement, but the problem is that it's only the four that cover the Utah law.
Right.
And you have to have that as part of your renewal, so you'd have to, complete one of the four anyway, so you might as well complete it
I don't
all.
have a lot of complaints about the vendor that I used.
Yeah.
For mine, other than the particular legislative changes being spelled out.
Yeah.
So they're better instead of there's no confusion from year to year, from 2 year to 2 year renewal period. My hope is that regardless of which of the four vendors that PMP uses, that, you know, and I guess this is the DHHS that's responsible for making sure they're approved and keeping that information up to date, so there's at least a minimum standard of education. We are from their renewals.
Right.
But I don't have a whole lot of else to add to that. If anybody else have questions or concerns, or anybody online perhaps?
I have one question on the organization. Before this document, doing this stuff, do you feel that 4 hours is enough sufficient? I just look at it compared to the other states in America, we're below that average.
I think so. I can't imagine what could have been happening. In Colorado and I think more emphasis can be in certain areas than others in that, but it does cover all the areas.
And based on your input, one was have the providers focus more on Utah specific law changes. And that's a challenge, I think, for some of the national providers to keep up with that, and for every one of them, because they all have to spend money and resources to update. But we hear you on that. I think that's something we can work on improving on that.
Rich, context. If these courses, if there's this update, it's also going to only take it for 2 years. Do they get notification?
Oh, yeah.
This training has been updated.
And we provide them a time frame within which we expect them to make the updates, and we audit them and make sure they've made the updates.
Do you know if they email then those that have used that for their education? Like, is Chris going to email over here? Say, again, it's the Utah law change, hopefully you're okay.
We send, let's see.
You send an email to all the PC.
About law changes?
Yeah.
If it's significant, we do.
I'm just worried it's gonna be too, if something changes substantially that could impact how they're prescribing cannabis. And they don't give it to you.
Yeah, I think right now it's on the QMPs to have the medical cannabis website bookmark on the browser to check that periodically for any legislative updates.
Right.
We do maintain a page.
And we're proactive about sending out significant changes to the statute after the session. And then we invite them to, in fact, we did do a webinar where we invited medical providers to join to learn about what changes impacted them in the clinics as well after this last session. Yeah.
So I will comment, even with the pharmacology, which you think wouldn't change, with the exponential increase in research that's happening in the field, I think we are going to be seeing new information coming available in a much more rapid basis. And I think it's important as part of these trainings, and I can't really comment on the trainings that exist because I haven't seen content on any of the group boards I'm involved with. I've not seen the CME training content. I would find that very interesting. But particularly in areas like drug interactions, central versus peripheral interactions with receptor phenotypes, I think as our understanding grows, we are going to be altering what used to be the dogma in pharmacology. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind and, please wait for our own research, whether it's, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, you just search cannabis, there's 1,600 trials. Now, some have ended, some have closed, but there are a lot of ongoing trials as well. As each of those come out, we're gonna see changes, specific to different patient populations as well, that might be beneficial. So we need to keep up to date both on the clinical and preclinical research that's taking place. And we may see the new pharmacological and physiological information coming.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not important, I mean,
Yeah.
I love any new information, especially if it's really groundbreaking information. You know, there'll be more, important if the.
Absolutely.
And if there's any board member that's interested in taking any of the courses, we could chat with the providers to see if they're willing to give you access. At no charge, does take your time, but if you're interested, you're welcome to take the time to do that.
Absolutely, sign me up.
Right.
Reaching out to
Trevor, we just make a note to work on that.
be on it,
Right.
I think it's also a great opportunity, and I know Valerie's on this call, but it's a great segue into the Center for Medical Cannabis Research and how they can get involved in keeping abreast of the new research advancements that are making in the field.
Sure.
Incorporating CNE opportunities into their education department. For funding.
Great.
Any further discussion from the board?
But thank you for doing this.
Yes, much appreciated. Thanks for all the research.
And this is actually something we've shared with other states as well. And they appreciated it. I was at the Cannabis Regulators Association meeting and we had a few states request to benefit from the research that Trevor completed as well. Because they were interested in making some changes on their end as well.
Okay, well, we do have it set for public comment. We don't have it here in the room. It does look like we have 2 online. We'll go ahead and go in order. So we can go ahead and unmute. I believe Michelle McComber will be the first one, and then there's also a Dr. Meredith Fisher. So let's start with Michelle McComber. Please introduce yourself, your affiliation, and please take 2 minutes to make your comment.
Michelle McComber with the Utah Medical Association. We support the CME. We think it's important that physicians continue to take CME on medical cannabis as they move forward as a QMP. And we do think that there are a lot of things that are happening over time that need to be updated, and we would just urge continuation, obviously, of the CME. And that is one of the things that we want to put in the statute from the beginning. So that, and then also just to update you guys that yes, in the training programs, they are looking at this and it is being considered. And it is also, as Rich mentioned, part of the opioid course, etc. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Meredith Fisher-Corn. Please introduce yourself, who you're affiliated with, and then take 2 minutes to make your comment.
Hello, my name is Dr. Meredith Fisher-Corn. I'm the editor-in-chief of the continuing medical education website called The Answer Page. And The Answer Page has been providing the Utah Medical Cannabis course since the inception of your program. And I listened to all of your concerns, and I agree that education is very important, especially pharmacology and specific disease states. And it's important to update the course. I just wanted to say that we accredit our course every year. We get an update, and I look at the literature and I update where it's important. And our course is focused on pharmacology and physiology and in the specific disease states. And I have communicated with the Department of Health every single time there's been a state there's been a change in the state rules or regulations. We have updated our site. And I'd be more than happy if there's anyone in the room that wants a specific disease state addressed, I'd be more than happy to create an educational course on that specific disease state. Anyone that would like to take a course from the answer page, I'd be happy to provide you with access to the course. But you can go on the answerpage.com and see the, if you go to the, click on the Utah course, you can see all of the educational objectives. There's a lot of them. And I'd be happy to listen to any feedback from you after you go through the course. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the comment. I just wanted to clarify, with that course, you're saying that we can take the course for free?
Well, anyone on the board that wants it, not any healthcare provider, but yes.
Anyone on the board. How do we reach, is there a way to contact you through the website?
Yes.
Or whatever you want.
Yes.
Okay.
You
Yes.
have courses in different states as well, right?
I do. Yes.
How would you say Utah measures up on our requirements for, good qualifying doctors?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that? I didn't hear you. It wasn't clear.
I know, sorry. I know that you guys have courses in other states. How would you say that your course that you guys prepared for Utah, how would you say that it compares to other states, courses that their doctors are required to take?
Well, the other state courses that we offer, it's the same CME course. The only part of the course that's different is the state rules and regulations. So it's the same CME course.
Awesome.
And most states require 4 or 5 hours. Some require actually less, which I don't advise. I think at least 4 or 5 hours is needed. And I do agree that the clinician should be updated on either an annual or every 2-year basis, because the literature, they are coming out with more studies, and there are some significant findings that clinicians should know.
Right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
I don't think we have any other additional public comment. We have in the room. So unless someone on the board has, we'll move on to second to last item on the agenda, which is next month's agenda. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to see put on next month's agenda? Not, I would just like to discuss.
Well, I want to say something that's not a big discussion, maybe it is. I would like to see how we feel about possibly doing more Zoom meetings, like, and maybe in person, like quarterly. And I am saying that as someone who has to like drive a lot of hours, but sometimes I just find the last couple times something was in the middle of the day that made it so I can cover like Tuesdays or city council meeting, so that could list that. And how many be here?
I want to say that we meet in person.
Legally amended that
To allow for it, but only on certain circumstances.
Yes.
I also-
You said you are able to attend soon.
Yeah, basically, the chair approves. So honestly, you as a chair, I think could just say, this month we're gonna meet via Zoom,
Right.
or the vice chair, you guys can decide it ahead of time, right?
The bylaws say that the chair can decide virtual or person, we'll always have this physical
Yes,
location,
so that's but to you for the next year.
it's up to your discretion.
I don't think it's a problem. I mean, look, I still think there is something to be said about having to be in the presence of someone and saying something. Yeah. Call me old.
But I make less.
But I also understand that the world has changed a ton in the last 4 years, right? It was the greatest thing that ever happened to the practice of law when I was in private practice, to be able to attend a hearing in an obscure court, via Zoom, from your office. It was really nice. So I think we can just do it as the bylaws here take over, right? I mean, that's what you can all decide on today, so.
Yeah, we can talk about our strategy meeting.
The one thing I would like to say for the agenda, a lot of what we hear, and I think the analysis that was done by UDAF, I think that sort of creates this is products in the illicit market or products from other markets, really products from the illicit market are better quality than what's available in the Utah cannabis market. I know there's been a number of studies that have been done, right, to debunk that, right, either through THC potency, obviously, you know, that reports come out all the time about pesticide use in illicit products, and things like that. I don't know if there's a way, you know, we allowed for, you know, products to be tested for research purposes. Now, those were in the market. But I'm wondering if there's a way, and this is where I would bring, you know, Jimmy in and Brandon in and ask you guys is, if a prosecution's been closed, right, you have evidence, right, that prosecution's now over, you would otherwise probably just go destroy that evidence. Is there a way we could create, you know, some sort of system by which some of those products could be tested, right? Because a lot of what we've talked about is trying to combat, you know, the illicit market, right? And I do believe in some ways that may be true, depending on who you get it from the illicit market, but it also may be woefully untrue. And people may not actually realize what's in an illicit market product. There's an article that came out over the weekend from the LA Times. Now, there are some producers in there who are specifically saying, you did not get that from a legal shop. That's a knockoff vape, and it tested hot for all sorts of incredible pesticides, right? I also know anecdotally, from what I've heard, people have taken products from the illicit market and had them tested at labs in other states, and they've come back for a whole host of different things. Is there a way we could explore transferring evidence from a closed case from you all with a chain of custody and everything to you all for testing purposes?
Absolutely. We've actually tested products from the black market before because they tried to sell them as hemp products in the state, and we see the same thing.
Because I think that would be very useful, right? I think it's, because that is one of the conversations that goes on, right? Like when you, from your report, that's the inclination, that's the kind of the insinuation by the people is it's better. And look, sometimes it could be, like, I'm not gonna argue that, right? There's a lot of people that are probably not doing this legally. There are very skilled people producing, you know, high quality product, but there's also a lot of people, especially when it comes to vapes, that are, I mean, what that LA Times article, in my opinion, exposed more than whether there's pesticides in the legal cannabis, you know, market in California, which I'm not sure they did their total due diligence on, which we'll find out. But it's more so that there is an illegal pesticide smuggling ring or rings within the United States where things that are not even allowed are showing up. If you looked at some of those things that those products pop for, those are not even pesticides you can spray, and those things are certainly harmful to patients. So I think if we're all committed to the idea of combating the illicit market, that would be super helpful. If you guys are saying it's already a thing, it sounds like an easy agenda item for next.
I mean, it's not a thing law enforcement transferring investigation.
The deputy statute change, the state statute dictates how.
Instead of you're a criminal.
Yeah. So there would have to be a card, but we do it. I mean, so for example, like firearms, seized firearms to be turned over to the state crime lab for testing for other things. And so it would just have to be a state statute change that would allow.
So we would make a recommendation for the legislature to change that in statute.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'd love to see that on the agenda for next month.
I thought we just covered it.
But we will have to make a recommendation as the board, right, to be able to make a recommendation.
Yeah, it's gonna be on the
legislature, right?
agenda,
That's fine.
yeah.
Well, I think it's important because it's not only what adulterants are in these products, but also they will be not getting anything what they think they're.
Yeah.
Because I think
That too.
The cannabinoid profile is actually even more concerning to me than the pesticides, because a lot of these products we find, like the baseline on the LC is just crazy. Like you've got so many unknown cannabinoids in there, and the stuff's been heated and cooled so many times, it's just degraded the product.
If you end up with something like that, you would have a marketing campaign on your hands to show people this is what we found in black market and illicit market, and here you have access to your full medical COAs. If you're not doing anything to combat that, that would be a really great way to go there.
So would we do a one-page summary for next month? And then a memo or can we just do a one-page summary and make the recommendation? We probably can't, right? There's nothing that prevents us. All right, I got the one-page summary. I'll have it for next month. Yeah, no problem.
There's one, Justin. That's the
He wants to recommend something for the agenda. I assume. Sure. Justin, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and make your agenda recommendation. I'm assuming.
Yep, cool. And this is Justin, Life Elevated. I just went remote. I had to get my kid to an appointment. Sorry, guys. couple of things on the testing of black market products. I think that's an awesome idea. Also, I would recommend allowing a portal for some of the products that are being purchased in California and Nevada, because there is a significant amount of producers who aren't even going through the licensing process and who have found ways to skip over some of the testing requirements and put their products in. So, when we talk about patients that are using products from out of state, from bordering states, what they're getting isn't always what they think they're getting. And so that may also be helpful for us to make our program more robust. As far as for agenda items, I would love to see, and I know this may be a statute issue, but I would love to see discussion of adding additional members to the board. And then this became clearly evident when you guys were talking about chairman, vice chairman, and seeing some of these other roles that may be eager or active to provide a voice, and specifically on the processor side. Selfishly, I'd love to see somebody from just the strictly processor area be allowed, and maybe a couple of additional patient voices or something like that as well. I love what you guys are doing. I love the voices that are on the board, but I just think we need more of them, especially in regard to some of the regulatory and legislative issues that are coming out of the legislature. We need a bigger chorus of voices there. And then I'd also like to float the idea of possibly having some type of regulatory review session with the current board on actions that are being taken against license holders in the state, and how that lines up with statute, and just a way for us to have some visibility on what's actually happening to license holders in the state under our current statute and within the laws of regulation.
Excellent. Thanks, Justin. The new chair or vice chair, when they set the agenda, will reach out to you about potentially presenting on those things. So you have to present that in summary, and then also you may have to take it to a secondary meeting and prepare a memorandum and settlement proposal. So you probably have to be involved as an individual. But all great ideas. And again, this is my last time being the board chair for now. Just a big thank you to everyone again. But please continue to come forward with these ideas. I think we have made some meaningful changes over board. I think that we need to continue this momentum to push cannabis forward. And also just a thank you to the department, departments, for continuing to work with us. I think this shows you how good policy can be made between people who might not always agree on everything. I think that this is a great example of how we should have public discourse, how we should discuss cannabis in the public eye, and not have it be in meetings between just certain folks and not others. Exclude these people, invite these people here in the public forum. I think it's just the best place to do these things, and I think that this board has proven that, and hopefully that'll serve as examples of other states. So just a big thank you from me to all of you. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here for a couple of years. It's been a great first year, and I appreciate your support as the initial chair.
No, I just thank you, JD, for everything. What has been sticking in my mind too was going back to the original survey of the patients who were no longer in the program. And one of the items under the miscellaneous was my employer that used cannabis. And I don't know how we would do it, but understanding why, or understanding how that's excluded, if this is actually be treated as a medical treatment, other being given access to the employment.
So different for public employers as opposed to private employers. Private employers go back to, I think it's either the Dish Network case or the DirecTV case out of Colorado from many years ago, where the employee was using it off the clock. The court ruled with the employer because it remained illegal under federal law, right? So the classification changes under federal law, it can change, but many programs across the country have not just protected private and public employees, they've also moved to protect private employees. But it's an issue that could be mitigated by those private employers. So I think that's why most states choose not to do that. But I would encourage Utah to protect these people as rightful medicine users as opposed to federal criminals. And the feds have just been too slow at that. So that's what happens. 100%, even more so.
Yes.
And to be clear, like I have talked to some patients that they were using, and then like they got their CV out, or, and then it's off the table, and there's not much we can do.
But those laws will, but to your point though, those federal laws will have to change. When we were out in MTC for NCAA's lobby days, you're gonna have to, the housing laws will have to be changed. The criminal minimums around cannabis and cannabis possession will have to be changed. So what you see is that you hope Schedule 3 is the first domino to start knocking them all down. The thing is we've got to be very careful what that Schedule 3 domino looks like, or a lot of us are not going to be doing the same, or this group won't be meeting. So figure out another job and want to go and get, because after I looked at how much a clinical trial costs and how long it takes to get something to market, I ain't got that time or that time.
But if like there's an OSHA guideline that says you can't even take, purpose that, then what's the follow that? There are those situations, but it should be limited to those.
General protections for employees, we should 100% have them. So I think we can make that recommendation, right? I think that's easy. Hey, so like without, certainly. From what I've been,
Schedule 8 just says the same thing as a prescription, right? Even the current company, prescription medication.
Well, I think one other thing to consider too is maybe not something we do any proposals on or votes on. It might not be a bad idea, in a meeting here soon, to take a half hour or 45 minutes and have a presentation or a discussion around what Schedule 3 potentially is going to do. The public comment period right now, the proposed rule is open until July 22nd. So maybe it makes sense at the next meeting or in August, I don't know, probably before. So if people want to submit public comment, I mean, we personally as a company are working on our own public comment, right now, around it. And so I think that's another thing to understand. We obviously are gonna, try to engage in some meetings with the departments on Schedule 3 and what we believe Schedule 3 is gonna do or not, which I think is really important. And then meet with, with lawmakers, because while it has some good benefits, if it's treated like a traditional Schedule 3 substance, it's just not gonna work for cannabis. It just doesn't fit. But there's some other conversations to be had around some form of federal regulation. So I would also, encourage that gets put on the agenda. I would be happy to spearhead that one as well, since it's so, even slipped in Schedule 3 for the last couple of months. So
I think we should be employed, a lot of patients live their housing if they get found that they have.
I think the Harvard is a lot of federal housing, right?
Well,
Is there state assistance?
There's state assistance, federal, and then there's just renters rate on. And so even if they don't, so if they.
For sure. It's like activity. Well, it's not what. That's wonderful. I think that's the most we've ever had in terms of. So, great job. I will take the final motion of the day. Yeah, it's gonna be. Actually, I think I launched it.